Hello, I'm Fortuna Chess Coach, and today I'll be sharing one of my favorite things to do. And it's going to be a little bit different than a lot of other chess content that's out there because it's going to come from a book. From the time I was quite young, I enjoyed the opportunity to use a book to play the game of chess. And as I didn't have a lot of people around to play games with as a kid, I found it really nice if I could just pull out a book and put myself into a game that was within the book. So we're going to do that together today. We're going to look at a game that was played from a wonderful book. And I won't be going through this entire book or anything like that, but just gives you an idea of the quality of the games within this one. This is Garry Kasparov's Greatest Games of Chess, Volume 1. Hopefully you can see that okay. Looks like I've got that fairly well in there. Yeah, so Garry Kasparov's Greatest Games of Chess, Volume 1. And this is by Igor Stohl, if you're looking to pick that up. Go ahead and just put this off here to the sides. This is the book cover that I have, and the book, of course, is over here, so I'll be using the book to play through the games with you. But I'm glad you've decided to join me today, and I hope you're ready to embark on this journey of playing games from the past as if you're actively playing them today. So when you want to learn other activities in life, you'll oftentimes turn on a show, maybe a football game, trying to learn how to play that game right, and you'll watch the players, and then through watching them play, you kind of get an idea of how to play that game, right? Well, with chess, recently things have taken off quite a bit. We do have a lot of video content, but when I was younger, one of the best ways to consume chess information was from a book. So I found myself in this activity quite a bit, and it's really fun. So in this particular game, Garry Kasparov has the white pieces, and his opponent has the black pieces. And for that reason, we'll be looking at the board from the white side. Now I would usually just go ahead and make that first move that was played by white, so in this case e4, and then put their opponent's move on the board as well. And then at that point, I would close the book, and just put it off to the side, and I would just be thinking to myself about what would I want to do from here, right? And I think this exercise can greatly improve your game, especially done throughout the entire game. So in this case, I'd be looking at the white pieces and saying, you know, what should I do here? Like, what are some ideas? Like, what would I like to be doing? And of course, I want to be able to castle quickly. That's a goal, right? And it's kind of nice too if you can somehow dictate play. Somehow you're telling your opponent what to do. So for example, if I make a move like h3, I'm really not affecting the position in a way where the other side of the board is feeling threatened or needs to somehow respond to that move, right? They can pretty much make any move that they want to make, and no material would be lost. They would keep, you know, like this pawn would be fine. The one piece they put into play would be fine. There'd be no attack or any kind of harm that would come to that pawn from h3. But as we think that way in chess, it kind of gives you an idea of what types of moves you might want to look for. Like maybe a move like d4 or f4 or knight to f3. Somehow causing the other side to have to think. And especially those of you that are playing like blitz chess or things like that, the amount of time that your opponent spends responding to your threats can help you have outcomes that are good, right? So if they spend, 2, 3, 4 seconds a move thinking about what you did and what you're attacking, and they're responding to that, that's going to put them perhaps behind on the clock and give you an opportunity to win just on time. So think about that as you're playing chess too. The idea of like when you're trying to select a move, which move is going to somehow impact play? What move is going to make my opponent have to respond accurately or find themselves losing material? And of course, in this new world, oftentimes computers are showing us this, right? But this has been around long before computers. The idea of trying to win time in chess and somehow have your moves kind of controlling the action, have the initiative, right? So that's what we have right now. We have the initiative. We could play our knight out, maybe attack this pawn, and then black would have to respond, right? And that doesn't mean they have to respond by defending the pawn. They could come up with a counter threat, like maybe attacking our own pawn. Or they might even just make a move where they're going to give the pawn, and then they're going to try to have time, right? So they're going to say, go ahead, your knight's going to take, and when your knight captures, I'm going to somehow create some other play against the knight, maybe the pawn behind it, right? So there's many ways to play the game of chess, and that's one of the things that makes it a very beautiful game and a very fun game. And then of course this activity we're doing right now, one of the best things about it is you can do it online. I'm on LeeChess.com right now as I play through this game. but I'm no longer at the mercy of computers and opponents, right? This is just me by myself with a book, just enjoying the game of chess, but actually playing a game in a different way. So I would, not quite without hesitation, but because I do it a lot in this position, I would play the knight out and attack this pawn. So that's the move that I select. And then it's kind of now like almost like back in school when you maybe do a problem in a math class and you turn back to the book to see if in the back of the book maybe you were correct on that thought for that particular game. Now, in this case, it's not necessarily engine correct, right? Because it's just a move that we're playing based on, in this case, my intuition or past games, right? But it's not about being engine correct today. It's going to be about understanding positions and just having an idea of why we're making certain moves, right? So having put that move on the board without looking at the next move for the player that we're playing, I see that knight c6 was played by the opponent. So now again, I put the book off to the side. Oops, that was the Lee Chess's autoplay. And we are going to have, I guess the engine got turned on. Maybe I hit the space bar or something. Just so you know, if you want to make a move automatically, the space bar will engage the engine, I believe. So I think when I bumped the space bar with the book, it brought the engine up, but I would rather play through this game without the engine. So yeah, so I've attacked the pawn, I attacked the pawn. Garry Kasparov also attacked the pawn, and the opponent defended the pawn with the knight. And here there's a wide variety of moves that are possible. There's d4, bishop to c4, you can play c3, a lot of ways to play this position. You can even consider moves like d3. There's lots of things, but one of my favorite ways to play, and this has come from many games, is things like this. Just a simple move like bishop to e2, preparing castling, kind of getting ahead of the fact this bishop might come out and pin my knight. It's not the most aggressive move, but it's kind of more my style. So I enjoy having positions where initially, before I castle, I don't have to respond to my opponent's threats as much. So, for example, if this bishop goes out further, if it goes out to d3, well then knight b4 could attack it, right? If it goes out to c4, you might see knight to a5 to put pressure on it, right? All the way out to b5, if you play the Ruy Lopez or play against the Spanish game with black a lot, you can play a6, right? So in all those cases, my bishop would have to move again, right? But if I go here, the only attack that I see on the bishop is maybe knight here, and then I could capture the knight, which would double their pawn. So I don't mind that threat to the bishop, but I would probably play bishop to e2. And I will say, if I was trying to be accurate for the book, this is probably not the move that's played by Garry Kasparov. I would expect Garry to play a move like bishop to c4 or d4, related to what I talked about a minute ago, trying to put pressure on the position. This is a grandmaster game. Oftentimes, when you don't take the initiative to maybe create threats or do attacking moves, your opponent can take advantage of that, right? But I just like the idea of the safe move, bishop e2, getting castled, and then considering future action in the center, where maybe my opponent, because they're further away from castling, might find themselves in some trouble, right? So, all right, so I'm going to peek back here. I play bishop to e2 as the move that I select. Go back over here, and I see that instead bishop to b5 got played. So Garry Kasparov chose a Spanish game, and then the opponent played a6. And here there's a bit of a choice, but I think most players are choosing to keep the bishop. You could also take. Just be aware that capturing does not lead to the win of a pawn. So of course, you probably saw this early on in your chess when you maybe first started playing. You'd see something like this where they capture, and you're like, oh, isn't white way ahead here? Well, absolutely not. The queen goes up, attacks the knight, attacks the pawn. White doesn't have a way to protect both, so that doesn't win material. And then one thing we think about in chess too is the idea that now you've given the bishop pair, right? So white has this undeveloped bishop that's behind a pawn. Black has both bishops, neither locked in by pawns. And although this is a playable position, it could be challenging, especially if you're someone that maybe favors bishops and likes having those in the end game, right? So you've already kind of made that decision there. So I believe we're going to see bishop to a4. Yeah, bishop to a4. And then we go on to the next move. Got knight to f6. They're attacking a pawn. And so you can begin thinking about things like, do I need to respond to that attack? Right? And it's good with this too to take some time, some quiet time. I've been talking a lot so far, but I want to make this as pure as it would be if I was doing it off stream. Probably have some music playing, honestly, like some different music for myself. I'll add music when I'm done with this, but I'd want to make myself feel pretty calm and try to put myself almost into like a tournament-like situation mentally, right, where I'm just completely isolating on the game. So from here forward, I think I'm going to try to model that for you, and I hope you enjoy it. So appreciate you being here. and hopefully getting some ideas on how to play chess a little bit differently, right? Okay, so I was trying to make d4 a thing. Like I really wanted that to somehow put pressure on my opponent. And maybe if they captured this way, I felt kind of happy about it. Then I push forward maybe and just try to, make a piece move twice for my opponent. Maybe because they haven't castled things, but they're only one move away from castling, and I just don't feel like it doesn't feel quite right to me. I think I like the idea of castling here, and then if the knight captures, just playing my rook over to threaten that knight and trying to be fast in the center against the king, right? So it's the kind of thing I'd like to do. Do I think Garry would castle here? Possibly. I think it is a possibility, because even if we were concerned about getting the pawn back, we still had this same idea, but now it's not going to be a check when the queen, like the same moves I'd shown you earlier happening again with the queen coming to d4 to attack both. It's no longer going to be a check, right? And there might even be some danger to the queen with the rook being here on that capture, right? So yeah, I think I would castle here. And it's funny. This happens a lot too as you do this. You look back at the book and then maybe the move you shied away from is the move that gets played. So Garry actually did play d4 here. I did not expect that. And so the thing I was thinking about was like, what if the knight takes? But I see now if the knight had captured, we'd have like maybe knight takes this pawn immediately, or even just castling. Probably knight takes that pawn though, right? So, but black here plays e takes d4, and again, we put the book to the side and we begin thinking about what should we do. I still like the idea of castling here. I know I can push this pawn forward, but I just feel like if I castle, I shouldn't say I feel like, right? Because that is the way we get in trouble in chess. You have the feeling sometimes, the intuition or feeling that things are going to go well. But we don't have to give the pawn. We could push it forward. It's just once we do, they're going to attack it again. And yeah, actually that seems kind of bad. We'd go here, they attack it again. I might even feel like we need to take the bishop at some point because they're going to have a queen. Yeah, if the pawn's forward here, so it'll be this knight, the queen, and this knight all able to hit that pawn. So I think I just want to castle. This is already a pretty wild game. That d4 move definitely changes like the pace of play, right? So wow. And just immediately, Kasparov does play. Again, I'm kind of like scared to make some of these moves, and he's just playing them, right? So, wow. So black responds with knight to e4. And when I first look at this, you almost think it's not going to be possible, but I guess you would have moves like d5 to help out the knight, or even f5 to keep it. And then as long as there's no pressure here yet, with like a pin to the king. And like the rook or the queen being able to come over to pin that, maybe there's a chance that this would be okay. And of course, white's pawn being here makes this move possible too. But this game already is being played at a very, very high level, especially an attacking level compared to myself. Like if you watch my stream at all, or you watch me play chess in general, I tend to be a more positional player and like looking for ways to have subtle advantages, trying to make sure my pawns aren't too weak. So like this pawn is pretty far away from this one. And it's behind a knight, right? So it's going to take a while to protect that pawn with a pawn. More or less meaning this pawn probably won't be on the board for the whole game. And then you're going to have active piece play or something else to support maybe the loss of that pawn. Now black has a similar issue here, so there's a balance going on. It's not too bad, right? But those are things I think about. Like I like to keep my pawns in really healthy pawn chains and have these like closed positions with a lot of thinking and subtle pawn moves late in the game that change everything. Maybe a nice pawn break, right? We're only on like what, move 6 here, and those breaks have already happened. Like so like for myself, let's go back and get this bishop, not bishop c, this one, bishop a4. Go through the line we're currently looking at. This pawn break already happens here on move 5. So move 5, white already makes a pawn break, and they're making a pawn break before castling. of course, when you do things like this, it's based on study and understanding, and it's exciting. So yeah, I've got this e5 move. The knight goes up here, and at first I was just thinking, like, is that even possible? But of course it has to be. Consider like ways to attack the knight. Well, you could go here and attack it, and you might even get surprised with a move like this, right, where the knight suddenly attacks the queen and the bishop. So that's something to do too when you're playing the game of chess, is just kind of consider that first response your opponent might have, right, as you try to make decisions about where should I put my pieces. I might say something like, oh, I could play queen to e2 and attack the knight, and maybe that's fine, right? In this case, I don't mind it as much. The bishop's out, but if the bishop was still here, I'd definitely be concerned about maybe affecting that bishop's movement in the game, right? And maybe slowing down my own development. I still want to castle. I've wanted to castle for the last 2 moves, so again, I would choose castling here, just because your attacks tend to be much more successful when your king is off into safety. What that does for you is it means you're not responding to your opponent's threats as much, so you're able to focus on your own moves. And that's usually what leads to like a successful attack, right? Is the idea of not having your attack interrupted by moves you have to respond to. So like even right here, if I make the queen move to attack the knight, immediately black could play this check, and because my king's right there, that somehow slows down my ideas, right? So it's no longer about the knight. Maybe the knight's even helping out with c3 somehow, and there might even be like some sacrificial ideas there, right? So it's one of those things where if you're going to be either attacking your opponent's pieces or trying to get some kind of decisive outcome with like a combination, combinations can be slowed down or influenced greatly by checks or things that somehow change the position, and you have to consider each of those as you go to execute your combination, right? So again, I'm selecting castling here, and this is on move 6, so go back over and peek, and yeah, I see that castling is selected by Garry Kasparov as well. So I finally got it right. Feels kind of good, but what you'll find is that as you do this exercise more and more, the amounts of times that you're correct will go up, and you should begin to have more of an understanding of the positions. Now, I tend to be more of a d4 player, and this game began with e4 and e5, one of the most attacking, probably the most attacking line in chess, maybe next to like the Sicilian, which is also a super wild opening, or can be. So yeah, so it's fun to do this, I think. I really hope that you're getting that sense. So the opponent then plays bishop to e7, and so I think what they're thinking about is they want to be able, if the rook was to threaten the knight, to play one of these moves, like maybe d5 or f5. And then what they noticed was, if there was a capture, so like if the rook had come over, the pawn had come up, en passant capture, so when a pawn moves 2 spaces, there's an ignored capture. Like if the pawn had moved once and then moved again, there'd be an opportunity to take it. So when it moves twice and a pawn's up here, you're able to make this en passant capture, right? So, but what they noticed the black side did is if they did that immediately, right after the rook move, then this pawn capture would actually still leave the knight threatened, and the knight would be pinned to the king. So this bishop move is making it so that move no longer will lead to a pin to the king. So although the bishop e7 move might not seem like much here, it's a very thoughtful move. It's based on both the desire to castle and both the desire to be able to meet this move with perhaps d5 or some other move where the knight can then go back and recapture the pawn, right? So the knight's able to capture back here on either of those en passant captures. So all right, so bishop to e7, I put the thing off to the side, and I say, what would I want to do? And of course, rook to e1 has to be one of the higher things that I would consider. But if we're trying to improve our chess, we begin to try to think about maybe different candidate moves, we would call them, right? So we'd have like rook attacks knight as one way to do that. There might be other ideas of maybe trying to further get more development on the board and kind of keep development that way. But if I'm going to try to remove a pawn like this, right, I want to make sure I'm going to have control over this square, and the reason is I want to have central influence, right? So part of the idea of removing this pawn would be maybe to control this square, and in order for that to happen, like say like pawn captures, knight captures, controls d5, stopping the d5 advance, this guy has to go, because although this knight isn't directly controlling the square, the fact that it can exchange for my knight on c3 means I won't have control of that square. So I am tempted to do this with the idea of something like this, just trying to bring my pieces into the game very quickly. And I feel like when you play a move like d4, like Garry Kasparov has done here early on in the game, you're doing it for the sake of trying to gain some time on your opponent, right? He played this, I guess we did too because we're playing the game with him, but we played e5 to kick the knight. So the knight had moved once, with that pawn move, we got the knight to move again. And then we haven't spent or wasted time yet recapturing this pawn. We're again trying to keep pieces on the board. We're trying to attack. And this is very much in the spirit of Garry Kasparov. This isn't necessarily my repertoire, how I would play it, but it's definitely something to learn from, right, and grow into. So yeah, I would play the rook over, but my thoughts would be things like wanting to play c3, get the knight here, have control of this, and then once you control the center, many books or many authors and stuff will teach you this, is that once you control the center, then your attacks are more likely to be successful, and you also gain more freedom for your piece movement. So for example, another thing that's happening with c3 and the knight coming out is maybe this bishop could come back, and we're anticipating black to castle kingside. Of course, it doesn't have to be the case, but if black was to go kingside, I would love to have my bishop be able to go back here. And in many of my games, I'm also thinking about this knight, and so I'm prophylactically wanting to keep that knight out of these squares. And you notice in the, although I guess in the capture I gave you as the knight capture to have this, but if the knight's not cemented there with like a pawn on e5 or a pawn on c5, it's not nearly as scary for us. Of course, our knight wouldn't be cemented either, but I could see us like just gaining time, maybe attacking this bishop at some point, and it's just a very nice square in general. We could find ourselves getting to f4, and so again, it would give a pathway for a lot of my pieces, and especially like these two that are currently on the queen side, to then have an impact on the king side. And for an attack to be successful, you want to be able to have more pieces or more influence on that side of the board. So that's what I was thinking about, like rook over, pawn goes up. If they capture, I'm assuming the knight's moved away. If they capture, the knight can take, and I've got a well-developed rook, a knight possibly here, a bishop able to come in, and somehow that to me would be the start of perhaps the idea of a future attack, and I just need to see what black does from there. I will say that if this pawn ever moves forward, I'll almost immediately be thinking about this bishop's pin of my knight to the queen, and how that could influence my ability to get this pawn back, how it could influence my ability to hold on to this pawn, because maybe if this pawn's or this knight's pinned, then maybe this can be captured. And then of course even further things like, what if the bishop and the knight are acting together against my knight and I have to capture with this pawn? That damaged pawn structure seems extremely challenging to play with, and my king might find itself unable to be defended. I've already run away with, this is one of my king's best defenders, and it's already pretty far away from the king, right? It's kind of the choice you made with this opening of, what do you value more, your king's safety or attacking your opponent? Kasparov, at least initially, is saying, I want to attack my opponent, and I'll play to such an accurate level that I'm not as concerned about that piece having left my king's safety, right? But myself, I would love to see that bishop here, like just in my own style of play. I like the idea of these solid formations, and then kind of lashing out from there in the future. But of course, I can't criticize Kasparov because he is my favorite player, and I do enjoy his chess a lot. So I'm going to say rook to e1, and we get that one right, or I get it right, or hopefully you're playing along. I do find it it would be fun, I guess, if you were to like maybe have gotten out a board, and as we're doing this, maybe try to follow along, or even just look at the board that's in front of you right now as we're going through this game, and kind of consider, what would I do against that? And then it really is that full experience of like, you're now playing against that opponent, and as you're seeing me within this game, it's not my normal repertoire, so I don't have that like really high comfort with it, but I'm still trying to play it as if I was in it, even though it's not perhaps the types of moves or things I would be the most comfortable playing, right? So in that way, it will allow me to grow into maybe being an e4, e5 player in the future, but there's a lot to consider here. Like, I'm mostly just looking at it somewhat simplistically for the purpose of maybe having this video not be 3, 4, 5 hours, but at the same time giving some ideas or things to think about, because my goal with this isn't necessarily even just to share this game at all. It's more to show the activity that we're doing and how you could be doing this, and especially if you're finding yourself, maybe your chess club's kind of far away, or you don't have a chess club and you want to play online, but then through online play recently you've just discovered that it isn't as much fun, right? Maybe you feel like a lot of the games your opponents might be using some assistance, like a computer, right? Well, this is a way to remove that from them. This is a way to enjoy the game for its sake, right? So you're no longer impacted by those activities of other people online, right? So, and having done this for years prior to online chess, it's definitely something I wanted to share with you today. Like I said, get maybe a favorite snack, some kind of crackers or something to snack on, maybe something to drink that you really enjoy, whatever that would be. Hopefully non-alcoholic would be my preference for you, but iced tea or something. But we get that thing, so you're able to keep your concentration right, and you just relax with it, and maybe some music, and then you dive into one of these games, and you just try to be that grandmaster. Try to play as if you were that grandmaster all these years later, right? So, all right, so rook to e1 threatens the knight. Now we look for our opponent's move, knight to c5. And this move is kind of a bummer, right? I mean, let's be honest. When I say bummer, I mean it's attacking our bishop, right? And we've only got one place to retreat that's not, you know, controlled by our opponent's pieces, and it's still threatened, right? So there's nowhere this bishop can go right now where it's not going to be removed from the board by a knight, or not be able to be removed from the board by a knight or a pawn, right? So, we've essentially lost the bishop pair. That's the way this game is beginning. And we have to consider then, you know, if we were playing the game, you know, tournament or otherwise, you have to consider like what the impact of that is, right? And then you could also say, so say you were like playing a tournament game, or you were playing a game, perhaps I was thinking too simplistically, right? I was thinking about maybe defend the knight and that kind of stuff, and now suddenly this move happens, and you might have thoughts of like, oh, maybe I should have played c3 immediately so the bishop could have, you know, tucked away. And then this type of thinking, when you get in this mindset of like what you could have done that you didn't do and the move surprised you, it can kind of get in the way of actually being in the current position that you're looking at and actually solving it thoughtfully and carefully. So when that type of thing happens, definitely try to kind of pause for a minute and then look at it again and say, wait, what are some of the disadvantages perhaps of that move, right? So at first you think like, well, gosh, I get in the bishop pair. But then you can start thinking, okay, but isn't this pawn still pretty weak? And can't we maybe take the knight? And when we then control a lot of squares in the position, and our pieces would have a lot of freedom, a lot of space. Like you just begin to picture that in your head. Like this gets captured, either pawn captures back, maybe the knight captures, maybe the queen captures. You could also consider no capture and just playing with the active pieces, maybe like a knight coming here, or somehow challenging this knight. But it doesn't seem so bad all of a sudden. You just kind of realize, okay, there's a space advantage. There's really no pressure on the king. I mentioned how the bishop had left, but this bishop isn't out here. There's no knight on f6. Like the king side seems very much to be our minor piece and like good development by us. They haven't castled yet, so maybe not so bad, right? We can look at this and then we say, what should we do? And I'm thinking maybe take that knight on c6. Although that would help. That would kind of help them catch up with development. As I say that now, because the pawn would take, and then suddenly this bishop becomes active. And I kind of like that our bishop is like, we've got this advantage of like our bishop already being active, not behind a pawn. Our king is already castled. So I'm considering ideas of like how to keep advantages. Actually, bishop to b3 might actually start to sound kind of good, even though, I mean, their pawn's still falling on d4 anyway, or should in the future. So it's like, I almost like that better because I feel like I might be able to get more development, but you still have to come up with some concrete things, right? So it's like if the knight takes, which pawn should be used to recapture? Like those are thoughts you should have as you start to do that. So that way, maybe the next move you're not having to solve as much, right? You're trying to be able to play maybe more quickly or have some idea of an understanding of the position. But this is hard for me. You know, it's like this seems more natural, like doubling the pawns, but they do have both bishops, and the bishops can play very well with doubled pawns. In fact, sometimes there's some additional open lines that happen with that are nice. Yeah, what do we do here? I guess we could also make a move like this. We could play c3, and then the bishop's protected. But that seems like a bit of lost time. Like knight takes, queen takes. They could play b5. Now the bishop's getting developed, and then this b5 move against the queen would buy time. So I'm thinking either bishop to b3 or bishop takes c6. But this is a hard one. I'll be honest. Like for me, this is a hard position to speak about because I'm not terribly happy with either of the moves. Like neither one to me is like fully doing what I'd like to be doing. Like if I could say what I wanted to do, I'd like to keep this bishop on the board because I noticed the king squares. Like right now, this is a very weak square in the position, and in the future, this is a weak square, partly because we've removed the knight defense. So normally it'd be like knight on f6 with a king on g8, and both of those pieces would be defending h7. But here, we've removed that defender, but we didn't preserve one of our attackers. So this is nice, It is giving us some space. It is helping to lead to maybe a future attack. But if you notice, when I went forward, it kind of allowed these light squares to be occupied by our own pieces, and now I'm seeing that perhaps one of my better attacking pieces might be coming off the board, and you know, black has both bishops. They'll have another knight that's, if not well placed, it's at least well developed, right? And it does have a nice square. It could fall back here to e6 and help out with this pawn. So all those kind of things, right? You start thinking about like, and I don't see a direct path forward, but yeah, I guess I'd play bishop b3. That's what I would probably play. But again, it's just a position I'm not finding the easiest to play. So, all right, and Kasparov went the other way, captured here. D takes c6, gets that development we talked about, and then knight takes d4. So trying to keep the queens on the board, right? So, and also moving out of this pin. So, oh, sorry, I guess I played that pretty quickly. I didn't even really think about that. It's not good. The goal would be to have us think about that move, what to play next, right? But then it seems like black could just play this. I mean, it's equal material. I'm just saying, like, if I'm trying to get an advantage or like be ahead somehow, I feel like that move causes me a little bit of like thought, because it's like, I don't necessarily want to just have everything trade. Like if knight went there, a knight takes, you could have like queen captures. I guess there'd be a knight check first to want to get a pawn in that case. So maybe that's not so bad. But anyway, Kasparov captured there. And I was trying to play the next move so quickly. And then we had castling by the opponent, and now we have to again think, what will we do? And keep in mind, these are like Kasparov's greatest games, it said. So I'm expecting some real fireworks here, like some real exciting stuff to happen. What do you play here? It's interesting, because like even look at the game right now, it seems like it kind of came from like this. There's one less piece to attack with, or kind of two less pieces to consider your opponent's and your own. And somehow from this, with the white pieces, without the bishop pair, Kasparov's going to have some kind of amazing attack. And it'll be interesting to see how he's able to use a position like this to have that kind of thing happen. So where could we... What types of things... Well, I guess I'm starting to see one thing. If the knight goes back here, I would have the option to go here and attack this bishop. And then if the queen wanted to take my queen, I could have an intermediate move of knight takes bishop check. And then, you know, that time savings would mean the queen couldn't take, right? So it might lead to a situation where things are a little bit less pleasant for black due to that, right? But then, with that in mind, I begin thinking about, well, gosh, this bishop would want to move. Where could it go? It could go out here. Oops, let me just start this engine again. It could go out here somewhere, maybe attack our rook, attack our knight. But they would have to make moves like that, right? So if they went there and we went here, they'd have to like somehow make a different move which allow us to keep pieces on the board, which is nice. And then you could even consider like going all the way out. So it wouldn't actually be a mate threat. So like if in the next few moves, like the knight had moved there and we go there, hitting this bishop, and then maybe this bishop comes out or something to be away from the knight, and we go in, we're behind a pin, but the knight's blocking it, and the knight's also supporting this, but we would have like knight and queen threatening like mate, even though the knight temporarily is protecting it. That doesn't seem like it's going to work out too well. I think the knight's pretty much like a fixture. The knight doesn't have a great way for like, if I could have this knight interact with this knight, I might be able to distract it or somehow use that to make the g7 pawn weaker to be able to have that attack go through. But it's just something I'm thinking about, is the idea of maybe like knight here, queen there, and then some pressure on g7 in the future. Knight to f3 could be interesting as well. And then even if the bishop came out and was willing to take here, I might even be okay with those doubled pawns if I have this dark square bishop to attack with on the king side and both knights. Or sorry, and this knight would be going away, right? So I'd have one less knight, but I have the bishop and the knight and the rook and the queen. I'd have 4 pieces to attack. And I see, like, this piece is on the queen side. It's a bit far removed. It can come back towards the king side. But then I guess there's some coordination issues between these two pieces, right? So maybe I can use the fact that these pieces don't coordinate very well. Interesting stuff. But yeah, I think knight to c3 makes sense here. It seems like a nice developing move. Of course, I'd like to go into like e4 in the future and maybe create some more dark square pressure for my opponent. Maybe like the ideas I had earlier, like if both knights are somehow here and the queen's out, maybe there's like more potential for a successful attack. And we mentioned too how the bishop might want to go away to avoid our knight, so that would actually put us like way ahead on dark square pressure on that side of the board. So yeah, I think knight c3 is what I would play. And let's see, knight to c3, and the opponent played knight to e6, and this is given as dubious. They did question mark exclamation point on the move saying it's dubious. So let me promote this variation real quick. So I promote it again. There we go. So now it's gonna be like the main thing I'm seeing here. So yeah, I think we can begin doing our idea. I mentioned before how if the knight went there, we'd have knight to f5, and then the queen capture. We don't have to take back here right away. We'd actually have knight takes bishop, right? So I think Garry Kasparov is going to play knight to f5, and so it's multi-purpose. One, we realize the queen exchange isn't going to be possible because we're going to take on e7, and two, they actually have enough to capture this right now, right? We don't have enough support. We have one defender. They have two attackers. A lot of chess is math, actually, so you end up with 2 attacks to 1 defense. We could meet that with a move like bishop to e3, but then you could still see further trades, right? You can see like knight takes, bishop takes, pawn to c5 using the bishop to hit the bishop, bishop retreats, queen takes queen, potentially. Not that they would play this, but I'm just saying they could. The opponent could trade down here, and then as you have less material within an endgame, it's much more challenging, right? So the endgame requires technique, and then oftentimes the pawn that was attacking at the beginning of the game, the pawn that was attacking in the middle game, suddenly becomes the pawn that is weak in the end game. So it's not always the case, but it definitely can be the case that as you get these pawns further up the board, especially past that 4th rank, so once you enter your enemy territory, you could say like, maybe black has like these squares as like where they kind of start having territory, and white has these squares, right? Then as your pawns go past your own territory, they become harder to support. And even if there is support, they can start using levers like pawn moves like this, perhaps where maybe somehow you're either pulling their pieces forward, so like pawn up, pawn takes, pulls the bishop forward, so the bishop is back here, now it's further forward because of that capture, or in the case that you actually want to support it into that lever, now it becomes weak, so now there's no longer a pawn. It'd be like this pawn replaces that one, this pawn goes away, and somehow this pawn is isolated, so all by itself in the center. It's already blockaded by a knight, so when pawns are isolated, we want to blockade first, and then after blockading the pawn, then later on we can pile up on it and win it. Very, very nice way to play a sound game and just win based on that kind of stuff. But yeah, knight to f5 would be my choice, and that's move 12. We go back to the book. Yep, knight to f5 played, and now bishop to g5. So I'd considered the bishop going out here. I'd considered the bishop going this way. I'd not done it this way, and I guess I can speak to why that is. So number one, black has the bishop pair, right? So when you have the bishop pair, you tend to want to keep it. And additionally, by playing over here, I feel like, this is a feel thing, it somehow like maybe encourages more development by white, like maybe attacking the bishop, and then also putting pressure on the king. I thought this at least we'd have like some counterplay, and then also we're keeping our bishop, and then this pawn is also on the same color as this bishop. So this bishop does have a lot of play, though. It's not like it's not a bishop that's not without play. There's definitely things that bishop can be doing. It could even go out here possibly and sack, or so maybe that's why. Maybe and they are playing. In my opponent's defense here, they are playing Garry Kasparov, right? So you might be having thoughts of like if you trade down, then there might be some opportunity to win or draw in an endgame versus losing to one of Garry Kasparov's amazing attacks, right? So bishop to g5 played. And then I'm actually thinking like just bring the queen out was my first thought, and it's kind of back to that like g7 pressure, and also the idea that if the bishop spends time capturing here, even though it's not the best square for the rook, it does begin to bring the rook off the edge of the board and closer to the game, and then it wouldn't be it would be solving the problem of like having to actually develop the bishop ourselves, right? So they capture the bishop, we take, and that's kind of like the bishop going out first, which is now allowing the rook to go to d1, and then from d1 it can attack the queen. Perhaps gaining time. So yeah, so queen to g4. Turn the page here and see queen to g4 played by Kasparov. Cool. So I get one right there. And then knight to d4. Whoa. Okay, so black with this move is really trying. I'm looking for a bookmark. Oh, there it is. I wonder if the cat took that. It's kind of funny. Yeah, so queen to g4 gets played. And so now, yeah, it is true this bishop is no longer sufficiently defended, only one defender, right? But look what just happened. The bishop and the knight are now coordinating against our knight, right? So when this type of thing happens, I'm normally going to look for like checks or some way to use that knight, like maybe knight checks here, knight checks here. Neither seems to work, by the way. Like, for example, knight checks there, bishop takes. They still support their knight against our... Oh, wait. I just noticed that, actually. Just noticed we have this, too. This is interesting. All these things that happen. Chess is such a funny game. You know, you make one move at a time, but so many things happen with one move. So there's a double attack on a knight on d4. There's a double attack on a bishop on g5. Both require the queen. So she's both defending this and this, right? And that kind of makes things kind of interesting. And you've been thinking about that. It's like, oh, okay. And then at the same time those things are happening, there's a double attack here. So you've got two attackers by black against the knight with only this queen defending, and then the other side of it is this queen defending these two, and double attacks here and here. So pretty wild position, but it does seem, because there's so many pieces touching so many pieces, attacking, touching, it basically means that there really isn't a way for white to keep all of the pieces on the board, right? There's not going to be a way to like stop all these pieces from capturing one another. So these are definitely, for myself as someone that plays the more closed positions or plays more positionally, these are the positions that are so hard for me, like so hard, because when things get wild, I feel like it puts me in situations I'm not in as often. So I really have to start considering like the capture. So what I want to do is like maybe capture here, and then that capture is going to be attacking the queen, right? So like, for example, if they played like bishop takes knight, so if I take here and then the opponent captures here threatening the queen, I could even consider like queen takes because the bishop's still threatening their queen, right? So this is hitting me as like maybe a strong move, and maybe enough to get some kind of decisive thing in the future, right? But there's so many moves here. There's so many things possible. Like, maybe it's just like knight takes there. It's like, and then there's no check coming off that though. I was trying to think if there's some way to like have like a check on our king and then have the bishop take later, but that doesn't seem like it's gonna work. It would have to be that way. So let's just start looking at this. Bishop takes, queen's threatened. I was saying queen takes bishop seemed interesting. And then normally you'd have like sacrificial moves that might start working or doing things for black. Like knight checks where like the rook couldn't take because of like queen in, but our knight is covering that. But yeah, bishop g5 seems pretty strong here. I'm not saying that black blundered because I don't think that's the case. I just like that idea of like capturing, pressure on the queen. But I mean, but I can also capture and they just play this move. And then again, it becomes like, well, what now? Well, maybe there'd be like a knight sack or something. The game has definitely hit a point though of like just that one move, right? That one move, so many things happened all at once. We saw all those attacks and just one piece moved. And that's probably one of the most beautiful things in chess, is just the idea of like how does that one move can blow up everything, right? But bishop g5 is going to be my choice. So I'm going to put that on the board, and then we'll see what the opponent played here. Knight take. Oh, it was bishop g5. Okay, so that got played. Bishop takes f5. So the next move I thought was going to happen. I mentioned maybe queen takes bishop as being a possibility, but let me look at this for a minute before looking at the next move. So bishop f5. I guess it wouldn't lead. It's weird, like optically, like just looking at the board, it looked like we were going to get material this way if I captured. But I see now that we don't. Like if I capture and the knight captures and I capture there and the rook captures, they'd have two rooks and a knight, and I'd have a knight and two rooks. Like somehow, even though it looked like there might be some time thing happening there, it didn't. Like I took a piece, they took a piece. Like and then if I take the, like it just seems like it keeps working out. Is our bishop still threatened? There's also the idea of just like queen back maybe, but that will allow a fork. Right, and the queen's still threatened for now though. Tough game. Tough game. What do I do here? Then I started trying to play stuff like this, like rook over, threatening their knight. So like one possible thing would be like rook threatens knight, bishop takes, rook captures, and then rook to e4 was my idea. So I'd have bishop and knight threatened, but I see now that doesn't work because when this rook wants to go up, the bishop would actually be attacking my rook on d1. So that that idea of rook, bishop, they're already hitting my rook actually. Yeah, so that's not going to be it. Could also play queen here, like a building up almost like a battery, but I don't think we have enough though, because so if like the queen goes here and they go forward, we capture, they can actually take with this pawn. Let's look at that. So queen here, they play this, and I capture, and they capture the pawn. Bishop could drop in, threatening the rook, but also threatening queen check, but the bishop can block that check. Queen takes bishop. There. Could also just start capturing, but it looks like they get stuff back. It's like one of those things where like no matter what I do, say like the knight could take the pawn, get the fork again. So like this is pretty challenging. Queen takes bishop is what I said originally. Queen takes bishop. Knight takes queen. Bishop takes. I don't really like that either. Sometimes in chess you have to play like the thing you like the most amongst the things you like the least, right? So this is still bothering me. Like once I go back, I feel like I never fully address this again. So it's got to be like a pin. So you could go back. The queen can step away from pins, and then this isn't going to pin at all. But we would have the file. And we'd also still have an attack. We'd still have like moves like this to threaten mate, right? So yeah, I guess maybe queen here with the idea of maybe like this to threaten mate. Bishop can block it, but then the bishop can't be part of other things. I'm going to say queen to g3. I don't know, this is tough though. Tough decision here. I'm going to say queen to g3. No, this is funny to me. I laughed because I was right on what Kasparov did, but I was wrong about the strength of it because it says it's dubious. So I made a move that I thought would be, maybe a good move, and then it says it's dubious. And then queen to c8 gets played, but this is also dubious. So we get the back and forth there. And I'm not giving evaluation like computer evaluation. Again, I'm just trying to consider next moves. Now, this type of thing does seem tempting. But it's kind of like how can I make it hit, because like I said, like this guy going back does make it challenging. So they go there. Play, I mean, the bishop's not threatened. I was gonna try this, but I guess the bishop's still protected by the queen, so that doesn't work. What would make this not a good move? Let's see. Look up, no. Look there. Threatening, like I said, threatening mate seemed kind of tempting, but just wasn't sure the bishop coming in if that makes sense. Right there. Yeah, even other pressure that I want. So like if I had the knight come in and maybe want to check and try to make this weak, I notice the bishop is both protecting this and also possibly against that, making it hard for me to see how to attack successfully. What do we play? I guess I could try this. I could try like bishop h6, bishop goes back, and then try knight to e4, and see if somehow having pressure on both sides like leads to an outcome that would be good. Could just play f6, I guess, though. Maybe. No, they can't really play f6, can they? I think I'd try something like that. I think I'd try bishop h6, but I don't know. It's just based on wanting to threaten mate and not really... Kasparov's so creative with his pieces, and you can see this stuff so well. It's like, oh wow. So he plays rook a d1, just puts the rook into play, and then knight takes c2 gets played. And now we're trying to use that. We're trying to use the fact that we're just a little bit... Do we care about the rook on e1? I mean, probably care about the rook on e1, but rook lift. Does the knight have trouble? No, the knight can get out, so the knight can go back this way. Trying to see, I figure there's probably something good coming soon, right? Because it feels like white's got a nice initiative now. I mean, you consider where we started in this game. If we go back, like way back here, it's hard to believe how wide open the position became and how much spatial advantage white got, right? Just from where we started. I'm just kind of going back through this real quick. And this is something I couldn't do when I was playing with the book, with the board. This type of playing back through it wasn't as possible, but so I tried that and I was wrong. This is where we're currently at with that variation. So we played these moves. And I'm just trying to consider now, like what, like the knight controls e3, the bishop controls e4. So everyone want to put this rook going forward. That isn't this square, I guess. Seems kind of limiting. Ends up there. So if I was, doesn't have to move right away, but probably should, right? Because there might be an idea of attacking this knight with the bishop trying to defend the king, and like those two together kind of working. So it could be like rook e2, then black does get a move. But rook e2 could be nice because it might help out with the g7 pressure where the bishop's responsible for both the knight and for blocking the mate, potentially. So yeah, let's go with rook e2. Let's try that. Yep, rook e2. Okay, cool. Queen comes out to e6, so the queen is looking after like the h6 square, so like that idea I talked about. The queen's looking after that bishop now. So although this pawn's pinned, the queen is not pinned. She could just take the bishop, so can't play bishop to h6. Where is it? Knight. I wonder if knight to e4, like knight to e4 will keep bringing our pieces closer. It might offer an idea like knight to f6, right? I think a knight to e4. Bishop to f6. Okay, so it just attacks it the opposite way. Cool. Yeah, and so you see what that did, right? So I knew we couldn't go to h3, but bishop f6. Wow. I was going to try knight e4, but bishop f6 immediately. And if bishop goes to g6, then we can have a capture here, right? So then they would have to take this one. So I guess you could do that. You could go bishop g6, captures, captures. That could be what happens here. Let's see what black played here. Yeah, bishop g6. And then, yeah, I think rook takes would make sense because you still threaten mate, right? So bishop g7. Whoa. I was saying rook takes c2, but bishop g7. So you threaten their rook. That is a good move. That is a really good move. So the king takes, the bishop's still pinned, so you still get this. But the difference is, the way I was playing it, we didn't get a pawn. But the way that Garry Kasparov just played that, there's a pawn gift, right? We gain a pawn there. And it's frustrating because you definitely want to kill this bishop. Like it'd be hard to make any kind of like rook moves and feel good about that type of move because the bishop would live, and then that's as many of us have probably seen in the past, like bishop f6 with the queen look on h6. If you don't have a dark squared bishop or another piece that can get in to defend, and in this case it's really hard to defend because the bishop's controlling that square. Or sorry, bishop on this side, I guess. Queen comes in, but it's not controlling that square. There's just lots of mating nets. Wow. Okay, we should see the opponent's move right away. So king g7. You saw me like pause with that one. And then yeah, rook c2 is going to be the obvious move because now that bishop is now pinned to the king, so like that move becomes possible, right? So rook c2, yep. Kasparov of course plays the. It's easy to play the rook c2 move because it's the point of the bishop g7 move is to create that, right? So, and then rook a to d8. And maybe just rook to d2. Both moving out of the eye of the bishop and also trying to keep the d file under our control. Yeah, rook c d2, it makes sense. And queen to e7. So queen to e7. I don't really understand that move. But maybe they're just trying to get this defended so they can actually start trading over here and heading towards an endgame. Could be what that's about. But now the knight can move in here, right? Because of the pin. Still want to play knight to e4. I want the knight to be closer to my opponent's king. Somehow I'm feeling that would be in my best interest. Even though I don't really see exactly how the knight and the queen would work together, but it could be things like knight to f6, maybe a check here eventually, and then either coming back or the queen was up closer when that happened. I don't know. Just a sense that I get is that I want this minor piece to be close to the king. So knight to e4. Kasparov. What does he play here? G4, bishop 5. We're on move 22. All right. H4. So actually, Kasparov goes bishop hunting immediately. So now this is threatened, right, to win the bishop. So black responds with king to h8. Interesting. Walking away from it, not wanting to maybe weaken things with the pawn move. What do I play here? I still like, oh, I can't play knight to e4. So I played knight to e4 a move ago, and I was thinking about it again. This is something that can definitely, in a tournament game, in any game when you're thinking a really long time, you can find yourself in some serious trouble if you think about the prior move you were thinking about when something changes. So like here it might be like, oh, I'll go knight to e4 like I was going to do before. Well, now the bishop just takes the knight because the king is no longer pinned. Like the removal of pins in the game of chess, I'm sure that's won many, many, many games where someone just doesn't notice that change, right? So, is there a time thing here? When I say is there a time thing, I'm looking at stuff like could like the captures of the rook, like rook takes, queen takes, and the queen's brought back one square. Does that give me as the white side any opportunity to like come in somewhere? But I'm not seeing that in this case. So maybe a move like this. No, isn't. Bishops, yeah, I'm looking at things like the bishop being almost trapped, or maybe now this is actually threatening something, but they could still play h5. We could also just push, but normally when you're pushing, you're trying to like put a piece on a square where it's not protected, or maybe there's like a double attack or something. Could be pushed to get the knight in, I guess. Maybe h5 with the idea of putting the knight here. Because I really am disliking the fact that the knight's not part of the attack. So I would actually probably consider sacking here. Sack on h5 with the idea of getting the knight in the game. Let's try that. h5. Played. Move 22. I had my finger on the move so I wouldn't miss it, and then okay, so queen to g5. So Kasparov actually tries to, yeah, that makes sense, I guess. Overworks the back. Huh. Interesting. Okay, so queen to g5, queen takes g5, h takes g5. Gotta recapture there. And then rook takes d2, we take back. And now what do they play next? Bishop to f5? Okay. So basically, we have this endgame now where we're not even up a pawn, right? Because there's 4 here, and there's 4 here, and there's 2 here, and there's 2 here. So like, when I'm isolating them that way, I'm kind of saying it's a 4 on 2. So you have these 4 against these 2, and then you have these 4 against these 2. So it's a 4 on 2 on both sides of the board. White's pawns are further forward. White's pawns are not on the square of the bishop. At least a lot of them. There's still 2 that are still on the square of the bishop. But the reason I point that out is these pawns are not going to get harassed by that bishop. Like they can't ever be attacked by the bishop, which just means you're more likely to be able to keep them on the white side, right? So Like even you can see like this pawn coming up might help. And okay, so how do we win this thing? They play bishop f5. I would be tempted for this, but not for the sake of guarding the pawns. I'd be thinking about getting my king in the game. So it'd be like maybe the king can walk in. But maybe that's not a good way. No, I wonder if there's an idea of like this, and then like just walking the king towards the majority. We need to make weaknesses in that majority though. So like the bishop move, that kept our rook out. We wanted to get maybe rook up here to attack these pawns, but the bishop move kept our rook. So could also make the bishop's really good. It's getting a decision of like both sides of the board. So it'd be really nice to make that move and make a choice to either be on the queen side or sorry, not just the queen side or king side. So let's go over here, but I guess what I'm trying to say is like it wouldn't have as much as many squares, right? So right now it's got like all these. It wouldn't have as many like back here. It would have less that it influenced. So it's considering things like the knight coming back and like attacking it somehow, and then trying to get access to like a good square for our knight. So like knight, and I'm kind of fighting for two things. So I'm fighting for my knight to gain access to e4, but I'm also fighting for my rook to gain access to d7. And I'm challenging the bishop to guard both. Guard this square and this square, right? So from here it's easy. But once my knight threatens that bishop, now it's got to make the choice of which squares to control. And either my knight comes in, or my rook is able to be active. And the knight moving that way doesn't influence the ability of this pawn to protect my other one. So I like that too, because you always want to kind of think about when you got pawns like this, they are weaknesses. So I'm going to be able to protect them in the future. So I like this because it's an active plan against the bishop, and I'm fighting for squares, either the knight or the rook. So I'm going to say definitely knight to e2. And this is move, promote this variation again. I keep putting other moves on that aren't the one where I'm guessing, and then it takes me off where we're at. Okay, knight to e2 on move 26. Did I miss a move? Bishop f5. Oh, f4. Okay, so no, Kasparov guarded the pawn first, and then king g7. Now knight e2? No, I'm gonna try knight to e2 again. King to f2, I guess. But I like what I did. I like that I'm able to at least explain to you the purpose of my moves, even if I don't necessarily get the move that was selected in the game. Then h5 was played. h5. Oh, okay, because we capture the king captured. Okay, so h5. So you start doing some thoughts about, like, you know, the rook coming over, pushing up the board. You obviously don't want to have a... And it's also taking away the knight square. My knight dream goes away with this. I would actually be tempted to take. Mostly based on this idea that I had of really wanting to get some squares. Like I said, I want the knight or the rook here. I want knight there, and I want the rook attacking these pawns eventually. I mean, I could either, but that's what I want. See, I'd probably capture, and also that's a doubled pawn, so that's like also my judgment. See, en-passant captures what I would do. So I'll just hold that there, so I don't keep creating other variations and then trying to figure out where we're at. So, h5, yep, gh6. So it is en-passant capture for check. King recaptures, and then I'm still back in this kind of idea of wanting to get up here, for the sake of a square. But has anything else changed? I guess bishop can go there. But I still like it. I still like this, and then trying to get here or there, like I said. King to f3, though. So the king just goes up, and... So I'm expecting the rook to go there in response. Yeah, rook to g8. So it's in chess, it's also often this thing of, like, you're threatening a move and your opponent's kind of stopping it. So that's what we're seeing here. Is like the rook's going to go over and stop this, this advance, right? So... and now I don't want to play knight to e2 for the first time, because now the bishop would check and take the knight, and I really wanted this knight against the bishop. I thought I might be able to get some, like either like an f6 or some other good outpost and somehow use that, right? So you can probably hear Leo in the background. My cat's talking to me. Hi, Leo. Hi. You want to say hi? Come here. He's down there saying hi. Sorry about that. At least he's been quiet through most of this. What do we do? Kasparov had to have an idea with that move, right? So it wasn't just about g4. He would have seen rook to g8. Leo's still talking. I wonder if it's this, if it's just putting the pawn up and being able to slide the king over. And he's allowing his opponent's bishop to move on its own to let the knight do stuff, maybe? There's also knight to e4, but that seems like a really hard game to win. Yeah, I'm going to try g3. G3. What do we got? Knight to e4. Okay, so he lets him hit, and he says, I think I got a way to win from this. Interesting. Bishop to g4 check. I would have taken that knight if I was black, but I probably overvalue knights compared to bishops in a lot of positions. And like even here, like, you know, knight coming here seems kind of annoying. Like, and we begin getting squares for our piece. So I don't know. And then they're also putting up things like this. We could have like a double attack. I mean, I don't know. It just seems it's a check, but I think they're gonna have to respond after we play like king to e3. I'm assuming we're gonna do. Just keeping the king further in the position further forward. So yeah, king to e3, king to g6. That's a blunder. Knight here. That's just a blunder, right? Did he really play that? No, he didn't. Oh, that's so stupid. That's so annoying. Yeah, it's just knight to f6, guys, and that was the end of the game. So, that's silly. So that's something that I think that you can take in this game too. So you start thinking about, like, I guess Leo's up here saying hi. I guess I can say hi to Leo. Hi, Leo. Something you can take from this game too is the idea that somehow a grandmaster makes a move in the position that just gives away the game, right? So it's like even with all the knowledge and all the studying and all these things that we do to try to get better at chess, even at like the top level, can still make mistakes, right? Anything else I want to say about this game? Let's go back through and try to look for some key things that happened in the game that were interesting, right? So number one, this d4 move was pretty energetic and exciting, and it shows me that even even with my king in the center, I can consider some of these breaks, right? So I usually make pawn breaks after my king is castled, but it's something I think that the stronger players definitely understand when to and when not to do this. And here we see Kasparov understanding that and going after it. But there were many ways this could have been played. Like, let's look at some of them. Like if the knight had captured and then say we took right away, they could have played here and just had some pressure. Like, it's not at all a simple position. You guys might even recognize this. And then pawn could come up, maybe pawn takes, knight takes. You could have something like this even, right? Some wild thing happening. But in these types of games, what makes them so hard for me to play is they're just so wide open. And what I mean by that is, like, neither side is necessarily dictating where the other opponent's pieces can go as much. Like in those closed positions I like to play, there's limited play, and you can really think about like what to allow, what not to allow. You can take away forward squares from your opponents. But like here, it's like the knight could go there, the bishop can go there, the bishop can go there, the knight can go there, the knight can go there, the knight can go. Like the freedom of the pieces to roam around the board is very high. You know, like maybe after like d6 things would have really got going, you know. And but there were several moments in the game where I didn't make the choice that was played by Kasparov that I assumed to be pretty good, like this choice, right? Understanding that it's okay to bring that bishop in the game, and that you know that there's this other play to be had. And then I did see that knight to c6, knight to e6 allowed this move, and maybe black did too. But oh my gosh, this went so wild, right? So we had this, and then the knight to d4 move, and I was like, whoa! And I played bishop g5. I saw that. Then on this capture, I wanted to play queen back, and actually, maybe I should do that. Actually, it's less impressive though, because there's a board right there, and it's on a board that's digital. One of my favorite things to do that I can't really model for you on a digital board very well and have you trust me is that it's super advantageous to go back through and play through that game when you're done doing this exercise and see if you can make all the moves. Now, I can visually see them because it's on the board where I just added them, but I'd like to have them there, I guess, just to know that I was right, because I feel like others got to check the book and it's a little bit slower. But without looking at them, trust me on that, I guess, I'm going to try to play through it as much as I can. So we have this, knight attacked pawn, knight defended pawn, bishop attacked pawn. I don't really like that the computer's showing variations, which is not really helpful in this case. So it's going to help me remember. This is so horrible for the exercise I want to do. But it is fun. I guess I open a new board, on the video quality. Anyway, so yeah, bishop went back, and then we try to think about, okay, so what was the next move that black played after that bishop retreated, right? And did they play knight? I think they played knight out. They attacked our pawn, and then we played d4, right? And then they took on d4, we pushed, and they played knight to e4, which I didn't even really consider that a move in the game. I thought, like, I hadn't considered that myself. We castled, which I thought was good because it got out of the check. Then they played bishop to e7. The rook came over, and the knight went to c5 and attacked our bishop. We captured there. They took. Then we played knight takes d4. They played knight to e6. We went here and attacked the bishop. The bishop came out. The queen attacked, right? Double attack there. The knight went to d4. Oh, I missed a move. I missed knight to c3, didn't I? So knight was on c3 when this happened. When did that happen at? Knight, bishop. Can't play knight to c3 yet. Castles. Must be here. Here we play knight to c3. Okay, there it is. Knight e6. Knight goes there. Okay, so now it's starting to flow back. Then bishop came out. Then queen comes out. Then the knight went here. Then we captured there. They took us. And what did we play here? We played queen to g3, but it was dubious. They played queen to c8, but that was dubious. We played rook to d1, which is being shown by the computer, which is kind of annoying. They captured here. The rook came up. The queen went to e6. We threatened mate. They blocked it. Then the really exciting move in the game, bishop took on g7. The king captured on c2. Rook came over, challenged that rook. Queen went back. h4 was the move that he played. King went there. I thought about sacking h5. That's what I talked about in the game, but he played queen to g5, which is being shown, which isn't great for what I'm trying to do here. Takes. And I was considering, like, how do you win from here? It's kind of tough, right? King came up, pawn came up, pawn went there, en passant capture. King, I wanted to play the knight back. I wanted to play knight to, sorry, that's after the bishop goes up. So the king didn't do that stuff yet. It was actually bishop here first. Yeah, bishop went there first. So that, so I was wrong. So after the capture, bishop went up immediately to keep our rook out. So I missed that, right? Then the pawn came forward, king came out, played our king forward, pawn went up, took, recaptured, king went here, rook came over to block, knight went to e4, bishop checked, we went to e3, and then the weird move in the game, so you need the coordination between these pieces. King went to g6 and then this. So why did the king go to g6 is my question. But yeah, so it was an interesting game, I guess. But I will say that full exercise you just saw of, like, playing through the game, thinking about each move as you make it. I kind of had like a dialogue that was in my head as I went through the game. Much of it was probably wrong, right? But that's part of the learning process. Like, I did this all without an engine. There was one on the website, obviously, that was trying to interact with me, but I did it without the engine, just did the thoughtful process. And I'm saying just by doing what I did right there, your game will improve a lot. I guess with that, I'll say, let me know how this goes for you in the comments. Let me know if you start attempting this in your own day-to-day chess learning. Like, I know a lot of us are doing tactical problems. We're watching Chessable. There's some fantastic content out there. There's wonderful books all over about chess. In fact, all these books behind me are on chess. But let me know how that goes for you. And then also let me know about your tournament results too, because I think, I might not even paused long enough in this, partly for the sake of not having it go too terribly long. I think we're just over an hour right now. But I'm telling you, this exercise and doing it just like you're playing a game and really trying to put yourself in that game, it's going to make you a better player. And then if you can find, so in this particular example, I was playing through a game that isn't my repertoire, right? So this is not like e4, e5. I can't even remember the last time I played that in a online or other game. Like, I don't usually play that. And because it's not my repertoire, it means that the moves are less familiar to me. And although I do get learning from it, it's kind of like all new learning, where I might just be like almost like a little kid learning chess all over again, right? Like it's almost to that level of it's so far away from what I usually do that now I'm having to like really work. Doesn't mean it's a bad thing, but because I probably won't use it in a tournament right away, it might not be the best thing for like if I had an upcoming tournament, right? But if you can find a game with maybe an opening you're interested in, and something that you want to really learn and do better with, then that's going to make the exercise that much better for you, I think. So you'd say, like, I want to play the Sicilian really well. then you choose a game in the Sicilian, and you'll find that your next time you play the Sicilian, maybe one of those ideas shows up, right? So you're not that the ideas here can't show up in other games. They definitely can. You know, like this tactical shot at the end, the way that happened, the pieces not coordinating. You'll remember that, and you'll be like, oh yeah, if they have a piece between these guys and they can't coordinate well, I can do this thing, and they can't protect one another. Right now, a queen could have gone back and protected, but a bishop and a rook like this, no. Coordination isn't going to get found from there, right? And then they would need some other move. They'd need, like, you know, bishop to f5 check. If my king was there, that would help save it. Or rook over check if the king was on d2, right? But there's no check available. The king is very, very well secured here, so it's just a knight attacking two pieces where they can't coordinate, and that ended the game. So I guess until next time, just remember, there's no chess player in the world that's quite like you, and I like you just the way you are. You know. Know that I enjoy that you took the time to go through these games with me today, and I look forward to seeing how your games go. So give me that feedback. Let me know how it goes for you, and can't wait to hear how this works out for you long term if you decide to employ this. Take care for now, and bye until next time. Bye, guys.